So at the age of 30, I was living in the prime of my life. I wore several hats, at that time. So I was a mother, I worked full time, and also was a student working on the MBA at the time, and realized I was having shortness of breath, heart palpitations during my workouts. Until one day I was carrying my son inside, he was 4 at the time, and I was winded. So I went to see my primary care physician. They ran several tests, and they all came back and said nothing. The palpitations, the sweats, I just was not myself. Finally listened to a cardiologist, and he ran several more tests. I had 95 and 98% blockage in 2 arteries. So then he went in to do emergency angioplasty, and so now I have 3 stents in. After my diagnosis with coronary artery disease, I then left that doctor's appointment, and I knew it was going to be a success story. And so as soon as I got home, I started Googling, only because my cardiologist said, Essence, now you have heart disease. Someone from the American Heart Association called me and asked me to be a part of this wonderful organization and start spreading the word in New Orleans around heart health, heart disease prevention, and it's been life-changing ever since. It's 20 years later, and what a ride it has been.
You hear all the time, especially being a healthcare professional, that to recognize the signs, be fast, all of that stuff. And never in a million years did I think that I was having a stroke when I was actively having one. Sitting in front of a physician, mind you, having a meeting in my office, it had been a very stressful day for me. And all of a sudden I had a crushing headache and I lost eyesight in my right eye. I ended up continuing my entire day at the hospital working. I'll never forget getting home and I called my mom and I'm like, Mom, can you come make me dinner? And she was like, yeah, what's wrong? And I was like, I have a really, really bad headache. Like I need to eat. Can you come make me dinner? She gets there, I eat, I go to bed. The next morning, I can barely lift my head off the pillow. And I call my mom and I say, hey, do you mind taking me down to our friend as an urgent care? I get there, I'm explaining to them, I was at a meeting, having crushing head pain, lost eyesight for a minute, and they're like, we're not giving you anything. You need to go to the emergency room. And I was like, no, I'm fine. Like I'm telling you, it's just stress, it's a migraine, it's nothing. And sure enough, I get to the emergency room and I had a TIA in my left occipital lobe that caused me to temporarily just have a loss of eyesight. And sure enough is because I had and didn't know it's called a PFO, which is when your 2 chambers of your heart don't close all the way after birth. So had to have like a little button procedure is what it's called. It's a closure device that closes those 2 chambers. And that was my first realization that I had something wrong. That is why I have become incredibly passionate about making sure that women get checked, because I would have never guessed that anything was wrong with my mother. I would have never guessed anything was health-wise wrong with me. But you never know unless you get your annuals, or you never know unless you actually talk about the things that you're feeling and not just shrub them off as stress or anxiety.
My why is because I'm a survivor, a mother, a sister, and a grandmother. 2008, I had just had my 50th birthday. And for the 2 months prior to that, I knew something was happening with my heart. And I tried to write it off. It was time for my work physical, so I had my physical. And he sent me straight to a cardiologist that very afternoon. And they wanted to put me in the hospital because they said I was about to have a heart attack. So I went to my cardiologist on the North Shore, and he said they needed to do an angiogram, like right away. But you have blockage in several areas, 95, 85, and 70. I had a heart attack on the table in front of this doctor, in between the 2 angiograms. They decided to go ahead with the angiogram, and luckily the 2 balloons worked, and I was left with 1 stent. This was my first realization that, number 1, I was too busy. I wasn't taking care of myself. I concentrated on work. And then upon discharge, I was told that I had to do 6 weeks of cardiac rehabbing. I was the youngest person in the room and didn't think I belonged there. And the very first day I exercised, and I could only exercise for 8 minutes. And that 8 minutes has stayed in my head since 2008. So my second day of rehab, my nurses knew exactly what I needed. And they sat me down and they showed me a video. And in that video, they let me know that if I didn't change my lifestyle and I didn't take care of myself and put myself first, that my lifespan was estimated to be 2 years. It was 2008, and at that time I had 5 grandchildren, and I wanted to be there for them. And so that kind of lit a fire under me, and I continued to go to cardiac rehab for a whole year. And I was probably the only patient they had ever had that continued to go to rehab for a whole year. And if I have an opportunity to do something fun, I jump at it and do it, because my goal is to live the rest of my life showing people that you can live with heart disease. And you can't, not just live with heart disease, you can live out loud. You can do stuff that, you can do anything you want to do.